This is Ray Mossholder. We're back to chapter 6 of the Days of Elijah. This is a really thrilling sequel to the Days of Noah. And I think it's going to get quite exciting in just a little bit. So get ready. Chapter 6 begins with Psalm 20, verse 7. Some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we will remember the name of the Lord our God. Psalm 27. Boxes, bins, and buckets were stacked all throughout the small living room of the cabin. More containers were stacked up outside on the porch, and even more around the back of the house. Everett looked between two stacks of plastic bins and out the window at the falling snow after breakfast Friday morning. Snowing in March. Kevin sipped his coffee as he stood behind Everett, also looking out at the accumulated flurries. Brother, you're in the mountains. You can get snow till May. Oh, stop. Don't say that. Courtney voiced her opposition. This is depressing enough without 2 more months of cold weather. Sarah snickered. I wish 2 months of snow is all we had to worry about. Everett walked away from the window, around an island of 5-gallon buckets, stacked floor to ceiling, and had a seat on the couch. Well, at least we got you guys moved before the snow came. I wouldn't want to be driving around the mountains in this weather. These roads are crooked as they come. They're dangerous enough when they're clear. Kevin sat on the hearth since the recliner was inaccessible due to boxes sitting on top of it. I guess this stuff to the cave is out of the question for a few days. Sorry, your place looks like a storage facility. We've done everything we can to make more room, but our bedroom is stuffed. We've just got enough room to get to the radio and the bed. Courtney squeezed by Everett to make her way through the front door. A house full of supplies is a good problem to have. And it's your place, too. Not just ours. Thanks. Sarah sat on the hearth next to Kevin. You guys have been very hospitable. We weren't sure how that would go, seeing how we'd never met, but we're pleasantly surprised. Same here, Everett said. You guys are great. Courtney opened the door. Cupcake, come on, boy. The dog came in and shook himself dry. He had been on the porch, so he wasn't soaking wet to begin with. He walked over and sat on the to the floor next to the fireplace hearth beside Sarah. You'll spoil him, letting him inside all the time. Sarah petted him as she talked. Courtney smiled and crossed her arms. We're happy to have him. He does make a good watchdog. We used to have a person awake every night to stand watch. He hears stuff none of us ever would. And I've trained myself to listen for his growl. I get up at the least little sound to check it out. It's usually a raccoon, but better safe than sorry. Kevin leaned forward to give Danger a scratch. Do you think Elijah will still come for dinner? He'll be here. Courtney gave a slight nod. He made of pretty rugged stuff. I'm looking forward to meeting him. Sarah leaned back on the hearth and repositioned one log that wasn't quite all the way on the fire. Is there any reason he didn't move down here with you guys for mutual assistance? A pang of guilt shot through Everett. He had never thought to offer. Everett furrowed his brow. No, not really. He's been up there by himself for ages. He's got a finely oiled machine running with his goats, chickens, rabbits, smokehouse, greenhouse, garden. It's some operation. I couldn't see him walking away from all that. All this was true, but Everett felt somewhat ashamed that he'd never at least extended the invitation. Then another thought hit Everett. And for whatever reason, he's never had any trouble up there at all. Kevin shrugged. Old man by himself on a hill with tons of supplies and hasn't been bothered. Whew, sounds lucky. But if you want to ask him to move, we wouldn't mind if he were sleeping on the couch or something. After we get this stuff to the cave, of course. Yeah, maybe I'll ask him. Somehow Everett knew it wasn't luck, and he knew Elijah wouldn't accept. Perhaps that was why he'd never asked. Kevin said, and even if he says no, we can give him a walkie-talkie. We've got a few, and they've got a decent range if he's on the same side of the mountain. Then if he ever did have trouble, he could give us a call. Oh, that's a great idea. Sarah gave Kevin's leg a pat. Speaking of radios, Courtney walked toward the kitchen. Let's see if we can filter any reliable information out of the GR propaganda being spewed over the airwaves today. Count me in. Everett got up from the couch. But maybe we can listen at the kitchen table. The storage closet feeling of the living room is a little too stuffy for me. Kevin, Sarah, will you join us? Sounds like a plan. Kevin stood and offered his hand to help Sarah up as well. Courtney switched on the power and turned up the volume. The Global Republic Broadcasting Network reporter was covering the geopolitical news. Former BRICS president and new Russian and Chinese alliance ambassador to the GR, Cheng Liqiao, has vehemently denied allegations made by former IMF director and new GR Prime Minister Simon Alexander that China and Russia have seized upon the recent period of instability to invade neighboring countries such as Mongolia, Vietnam, Laos, Japan, New Zealand, Kazakhstan, Georgia, Belarus, and Ukraine. Chow insists that it is not an invasion, but the alliance forces are there by invitation. Prime Minister Alexander has completely dismissed the fallacy, citing that Japan, New Zealand, and Ukraine are all signatories of the Global Republic Charter. Absolute sanctions have been enacted on China and Russia, banning all international aid, commerce, and trade by GR signatories. Alexander expressed his high and most prepotent majesty Angelo Luz's desire for peace above all, but warned that the Global Republic had responsibilities to its signatories, which could include military action if China and Russia refuse to remove their forces from these countries. In a statement this morning at the new GR General Assembly building, Prime Minister Alexander reiterated the Global Republic's initiative to reorganize the militaries of the individual signatories under the guide of Global Republic peacekeeping forces and the Republic's elite guard. He's calling on all those with prior military service to enlist, Those applications can be made at your regional census station. In other news, Press Secretary Athala Jennings gave GRBN an interview last night. We will be re-airing the full interview tonight at 8 o'clock. The highlights include her reminder to avoid pop-up markets, barter networks, and flea markets. She said that not only are all of these activities illegal, but they are also highly dangerous. Participants in such activities put themselves at risk to contract typhoid or other diseases, and there are widespread reports of theft and robbery in areas known to be hubs for illegal trade. Secretary Jennings pointed out that the currencies used in these markets are also illegal, and possession of such currencies will carry stiff penalties after the amnesty period, which expires on March 15th. Such currencies include all paper and coin issued by the former Soviet countries of the GR, including US dollars, Canadian dollars, and Mexican pesos. Gold and silver bullion are also on the list of prohibited currencies, and any jewelry which is caught being used for trade or barter will likewise be treated as contraband. Jennings repeated previous exhortations to operate within the confines of GR law, saying that while the GR has decriminalized prostitution and recreational drug use, these activities still must be transacted through government-approved channels using the mark for payment to prevent health risks and crime. Kevin shook his head. So it's okay to get a hooker and shoot heroin as long as you pay for it with the mark. Well, it's not okay for you. Sarah gave him a stern look. He hugged her. That's not what I meant. As long as you pay for it with the mark. Courtney rolled her eyes. Otherwise, it's at-risk behavior. They turned their attention back to the radio. The reporter continued, in North American news, typhoid inoculations are being administered at all census centers. The small injection contains a new vaccine which can be used to kill off an existing infection or give the recipient immunity from the disease. Those who are treated at the census stations will receive their implant at the same time, which will conveniently contain all of their health records, including their recent typhoid inoculation. While services could be paid for using the very same mark, it will not be necessary, as this is the first service provided by the new Global Republic Health Organization at no charge at all. As the administrative infrastructure of the GRHO is built out, all health services will be provided without cost to the consumer. The GRHO will incorporate elements from the World Health Organization, the former American Department of Health and Human Services, as well as all other health services administrative agencies from the former sovereign countries in the GR. In local news, electoral power is slated to be restored to the surrounding areas of the former District of Columbia, New Atlantis. These areas will include Winchester, Harrisonburg, Culpeper, and Fredericksburg, as well as the smaller towns in the region. These regions may have felt somewhat neglected in having power restored. The delay has been caused by the massive requirement of power in the former D.C. area to get New Atlantis up and running. If you live in one of these areas, Minister to the Americas, Richard Clay, wants you to know that your sacrifice is appreciated. Hold up. The news media is just releasing official statements on behalf of the government. So much for the Fourth Estate. Oh, the Fourth Estate died a long time ago. Courtney pursed her lips. At least we're getting electricity. Sarah looked optimistic. Everett shook his head and held up a finger. Wait for it. The anchor proceeded to relay the news. All utilities have been absorbed by the GR. Water and electric services can be applied for at your local census office. Your mark will be used to process your account for service connection, billing, and payment. Once essential services are restored, cable, internet, and satellite services will be reestablished. Your mark will also be your credentials for accessing emergency food rations. While the occupancy capacity of most census stations are already maxed out, with administrators trying to get citizens registered, vaccinated, implanted, and utilities restored, emergency relief food centers are being set up at nearby locations. Oftentimes, food distribution tents are being set up in adjacent parking lots or buildings next door. More populated areas have multiple census stations set up, usually at schools, post offices, county courthouses, police stations, or firehouses. Smaller towns will typically have the census station at the facility which is most central to town out of that list. The exact location of census stations will be posted on the front door of all public buildings. If you still don't know where your nearest census office is, just stop by the nearest public building, such as a school, post office, courthouse, or police station. If it's not there and there's no one there to ask, a list of census locations will be posted on the door. The lines are getting longer and longer, so don't wait until the last minute. People who do may find themselves standing in lines for extended periods. As long as you are in line to register by March 15th, you won't be in violation. But why wait? Kevin turned off the power. That's it. We need to hit one of those supply trucks to round out our 7 years' worth of supplies. Immediately, Everett's heart began racing. His eyes widened as he looked at Courtney to see her reaction. She looked as if she were caught off guard by the comment, but not as though she objected. He glanced at Sarah, who acted as if she'd already thought of the plan. Can we talk about that? Is there perhaps a more sensible way to acquire goods than knocking over a GR convoy of supplies? Kevin nodded. Well, I understand your apprehension. I probably blurted that out without thinking about how I should have phrased it. He looked at Sarah. I know you two don't know us very well yet, but we haven't survived this long by acting fast and loose. If we make a move, it will be well thought out. We'll have as much information as possible, and the mission will have an extremely high likelihood of success. If we don't like the odds of pulling a plan off, we absolutely won't execute it. I'm not a cowboy. Everett smirked. That was funny because cowboy was exactly the term he would have used to describe Kevin. He felt somewhat easier about the situation, but Everett was in no hurry to start his career as a pirate. So, what did you have in mind? He asked cautiously. Well, I'm not sure. Can you still access the GR communication satellites? Everett shrugged. It depends on whether the GR is still using the old passwords for the intelligence databases. At some point, that'll end. Kevin stroked his beard. The data is still going to the same hard drives, right? Everett tilted his head from side to side. Well, yes and no. I mean, the Utah data center has been online for a while, but everything, and I mean everything, is being shifted to Utah. At some point soon, government passwords will be replaced by biometric authentication that will utilize the mark. It tracks your specific heartbeat, which is more unique than your fingerprint. But there's a way around everything, right? Kevin asked. Everett shook his head. Not Utah. It houses a series of 7 quantum supercomputers called Dragon. Sarah seemed to catch on first. You mean like AI? Everett sighed. I mean like self-aware. Sarah shivered as she hugged Kevin. Her face was wrought with concern. Oh no. And that thing is running the whole global republic? Kevin seemed to be processing the implications. Could we take it out? I mean, theoretically, in a perfect world, if we had the right equipment. Everett chuckled as he thought about how far from a perfect world they lived in. Nope. Dragon is plugged into every computer on the web. Every store surveillance camera, every traffic light cam, every keyhole satellite, and it has its own army of drones that are always watching over the data center. It can make its own decisions on when to attack. Trust me, if the Russians and the Chinese knew what I knew, they'd give up and sign the charter right now. So no, you wouldn't stand a chance. Omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent. The totality of Dragon's ability seemed to be sinking in for Kevin. Well, Dragon holds a distant second place in all those things. But I think that's what the designers were going for. Everett sat back in his chair. If you'd rather just sit back and try to run it out to the end, we have some gold and silver coins that we could use to buy more supplies if we find a barter market that's still operational. Well, that's a pretty big if, Kevin commented. Besides, even I can't win. I'd like to know I'm doing my part to cause the New World Order some problems. If we can take out some of their supplies, we financially set them back by the same amount we increase our own well-being. Courtney giggled. Kind of like double coupon day. Kevin smiled at her. Exactly. Does that mean you're on board? Courtney looked at Everett and smiled. I don't know. Are we on board? Everett was hesitant, but he was obviously in the minority. Well, believe me, I've got no love for the GR. But if we're going to make any moves, they have to be flawlessly devised. Sounds like it's unanimous, Sarah said. Later that evening, Everett answered the knock at the door. Come in, Elijah. This is Kevin and Sarah. The old prophet wiped his feet thoroughly. I've heard so much about you. It's a pleasure. Nice to meet you, sir. Kevin shook Elijah's hand. Sarah squeezed around the stack of plastic bins to shake hands with Elijah as well. It's a pleasure to meet you. Sorry we've made sort of a mess of this place. Elijah smiled. Well, most people in the world today would be delighted to have the problem of having too many supplies, to be able to walk through the house. Kevin followed the rest to the kitchen. Everett says you can take us to a cave where we might find a little more storage space. I can do that, Elijah said. Once the road's clear, that is. Everett pulled the chair out for Elijah. It's supposed to be in the 50s tomorrow. Of course, that's down in Woodstock. Still, we should at least hit the mid to high 40s. If it's sunny, that should get the snow off the roads. Well, thank you. Elijah sat in the chair offered to him. I trust you had an uneventful move. No trouble from the authorities? No, but we saw plenty of signs of the build-up for a total clampdown. The GR is building checkpoints and detainment areas up and down the highway. Courtney began plating up the sweet and sour chicken dish she'd prepared. John Jones had stored up several buckets of premium dehydrated food pouches. And since there was a lot more beans and rice than the premium long-term storage foods, they were reserved for special occasions, as this dinner. She'd prepared 3 of the Asian sweet and sour rice packets and added the home-canned meat from one of Elijah's chickens. Sarah took a seat next to Elijah. They're gearing up for a complete police state, totalitarian government. Elijah nodded. Well, the enemy has always promised freedom and delivered bondage. I would expect nothing less of him. As he helped Courtney set the table, Everett watched Kevin's reaction to Elijah's statement about the enemy. He didn't seem to think too much of it. After all, Kevin had said that they believed in God's existence and understood why things were happening. Everett couldn't quite understand why Sarah and Kevin wouldn't come along all the way over and place their trust in Christ. He said a silent prayer that God would not give up on them. Once the food was served, Elijah prayed to bless it, and they all ate together. Everett sat on a food storage bucket as there were only 4 chairs at the small table. Nevertheless, they made do. Elijah spread out his napkin in his lap. Oh, everything looks wonderful. This is quite a treat. Courtney smiled. Thank you. Kevin glanced over at Elijah as he mixed the chicken into the rice on his plate. Did you happen to hear the GRBN broadcast today? Yes, with the snow I had little else to do. Creepy stuff, huh? Sarah said. Elijah finished chewing, then replied, Yes, and it's only going to get worse. I'm sure you heard about the Temple of Baal archway that is being erected by the new Ministry of Religion. I guess we missed that. Courtney took another bite. Elijah blotted his mouth with his napkin. The Ministry of Religion is to be the last building at the end of the National Mall. And between that building and the Washington Monument, the Temple of Baal archway will be set up. It's fitting since the Washington Monument itself is a symbol of sun god worship. Sarah sipped her water. Cassie, one of the women in our group who disappeared, said that Baal was the same god as the Babylonian god Marduk. She said that all occult religions and secret societies trace their beginnings back to Babylon, and that Babylon is the same as Babel, which means gate of the gods. Do you think that's all true? Absolutely, Elijah nodded. And that's precisely what Luz is attempting to do in D.C. Just as Nimrod, the founder of Babylon, attempted to open a gate to the heavens with his Tower of Babel, so is Luz trying to unlock the door to the abyss. But why would he want to do such a thing? Courtney asked. For the same reason as all of those who have studied the mystery of religions before him, to tap into the dark power of Lucifer's servants. Everett hated this line of conversation, and he almost said nothing. But he couldn't resist one question that was eating at him. Isn't God all-powerful? How would Satan have power? Elijah held a finger in the air. Yes, indeed, God is all-powerful. But Paul writes in his letter to the church of Ephesus, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places." So the enemy does have power for a time. And this, my friends, is his appointed time. These are the days that have been allotted that Satan might rule upon the earth. We know the final outcome, but that is because we have faith in what the Word of God says. Those who do not share our faith will be deceived into thinking that Lucifer and his servant Luz, as I like to call him, will be the victors in this battle that we have just entered into. It is for the power to pull off this very deception that Luz must breach the portal between this world and the next. Everett sighed. He wasn't the type to be believing in black magic and interdimensional portals. But then again, it was his stubbornness that had landed him in the midst of the most devastating period of human history. He crossed his arms and reluctantly asked yet another question that he was sure he'd regret. So how is Luz going to open the door when this guy Nimrod couldn't? Elijah took a deep breath. I'm going to have to give you a little background. Genesis 6 tells us of the Nephilim, which means fallen. Says that the sons of God procreated with the daughters of men, creating a hybrid race. Now, some of this race were giants, and others were endowed with demonic power. It was because of this that wickedness increased at such a level that God had to wipe the slate clean with the great flood. Additionally, he had to annihilate the genetic corruption which was coming upon the human race and destroying the species through interbreeding. This genetic corruption was part of Satan's plan to block the coming of Messiah, as he had to be born of a virgin woman, that he might be fully God and fully man. God destroyed the world with a flood, saving only Noah and his family. It is thought that neither Ham, one of Noah's sons, or Ham's wife, preserved the esoteric wisdom of the Nephilim, for it was their offspring, Nimrod, who settled in Shinar to begin work on reopening the pathway that had been shut off by the flood. And it is Nimrod, who came to be known as Marduk, Baal, and all the different manifestations of the sun god. Yet it's not the sun that the highest orders worship, but Sirius, the dog star, which in the day is obscured by the light of the sun, that the highest order of the mystery religions worship. In Egypt, Sirius was considered to be the most evil of all the stars that were gazed upon in the night sky. Everett relaxed his arms and let them fall to his side. I'm enjoying the history lesson, but what does Sirius have to do with Luz opening a demonic doorway? I'll get to that if you let me. Elijah gave him a stern look that showed his annoyance at being interrupted. New Atlantis, or Washington, D.C. rather, was designed by Masonic architects who had been trained in the esoteric wisdom. It was modeled after the vision of New Atlantis, which was developed by a member of the Rosicrucian order, Francis Bacon, and the founder of the Enochian magic, Dr. John Dee. The streets of D.C. are designed to make an inverted pentagram, or upside-down five-pointed star. This is the sign of the star Sirius, and is the most powerful symbol in all of occult magic. It is within the symbol that demonic entities are summoned, and the largest single representation of this symbol is drawn out by the streets of downtown D.C. It is here that the gates of hell will be opened, and all manner of evil will be released on this planet. Kevin didn't look like he was buying it. His forehead was heavily furrowed as he listened. And all of this is in the Bible, the gates of hell being opened? Elijah gave Kevin a graceful nod. The fifth trumpet. Revelation 9 reads, "And the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth. And to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace. And the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and unto them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power." But let's not get ahead of ourselves. You've got a little time on that one, and there are other more immediate threats that you'll have to survive first. Sarah put her fork on the table and sarcastically remarked, "Oh, that's a relief. With all of the death and destruction we have to face right now, we'll probably never live long enough to see the gates of Hades flung wide open." Well, I didn't mean to distract from this delicious meal. Let us speak of more pleasant things. I saw some building materials on the side of the house. Will you be building a greenhouse? Everett nodded. He was all for changing the subject. Eventually, yes, but spring is right around the corner, so probably not until next fall. Kevin joined the conversation, also seeming eager to talk about something else. We scavenged those materials from the house where we were staying in Tennessee. The first thing we need is more storage space. Elijah winked at Kevin. And there's a man with a fascinating ability to state the obvious. Kevin began laughing, and the others soon joined in for a brief chuckle. Everett smiled as he thought what an uncanny ability Elijah had to take them to the edge of panic and then turn it all around in a second. After the light-hearted lark, they all resumed eating and enjoyed the rest of the meal, getting to know each other better. Once they finished their meals, Everett said, "Is everything okay, Elijah?" He could see the old man had something on his mind. "You don't seem quite as chipper as usual." Elijah looked at the others sitting around the table as if he were weighing the thought of replying to Everett now or waiting until they were alone. He sighed. "I've received my instructions, at least for now." "Oh." Everett had a sudden sense of loss. "Oh, I'm sorry. Let me read that again because it's Elijah speaking." Elijah looked at the others sitting around the table as if he were weighing the thought of replying to Everett now or waiting until they were alone. He sighed. "Well, I've received my instructions, at least for now." "Oh." Everett had a sudden sense of loss. He had quickly grown to admire the old man. "Will you be leaving?" Before he could answer, Courtney placed a cup of tea in front of the prophet and asked in a distressed voice, "When are you going?" Elijah put a hand in the air. "Settle down, both of you. Hear me out. At some point, I'll be leaving the country to go to Jerusalem. When I leave for Israel, I won't be coming back. But I've not been instructed on that matter yet. Before the amnesty period ends, I'm to go to D.C. I'm to stand before Luz and pronounce judgment against him and the global republic." "Then you'll come back here?" Everett asked. "I presume, but I can't be certain." "Good. I feel like I have so many things to ask you before you leave." Everett was relieved that Elijah would be coming back. "Yes, well, you may have more of an opportunity to pick my brain than you think." Elijah sipped his tea. Everett chuckled at the remark. It sounded like another one of Elijah's absurd comments. Finally, curiosity got the better of him and he asked, "Okay, I give up. When will I have this opportunity?" Elijah peered into Everett's eyes over the top of his teacup as he took another sip. "You ought to accompany me on my journey." Everett shook his head without speaking. His stomach sank. He had just finished dealing with Kevin, who wanted to knock over a GR supply truck. Now the crazy old man had in mind to drag him into the belly of the beast. Everett was on this mountain to survive, to keep his head low, and to ride out the coming storm. Why was everyone insisting that he put himself in harm's way? In a flash, Everett's opinion of the old man had evolved from honor and respect to thinking of him as a complete lunatic. Courtney grabbed Everett's arm. "That doesn't sound like a very wise thing to do. I understand that God has called you and you have a special mission. But what good would it do you for Everett to go along with you?" "I'm sorry, Elijah, it just sounds like an unnecessary risk." Everett put his hand on hers and smiled at her. At least Courtney hadn't lost her mind too. He wasn't alone. "Yeah, I don't have any skill set that's going to increase your odds of success. I just get in the way. He gave the prophet a condescending smile, as if he were talking to a senile, elderly man in a nursing home. Elijah's heavy-hearted expression changed to that of light amusement. He laughed as he pointed to Courtney. "Oh, you were to come along as well." "Me? Why me? What does any of this have to do with me?" She shook her head adamantly. "Oh, no, absolutely not." Everett put his hand on hers and smiled at her. At least Courtney hadn't lost her mind, too. Oh, the page didn't turn. Sorry. Here we go. Elijah stood up. "I should be going. I've caused enough anxiety for one night." Everett didn't want him to feel bad. "Elijah, you're welcome to stay. We're not mad, but we're not going to D.C. or New Atlantis or anywhere else. We put a lot of effort into making this cabin our fortress." Exactly." Elijah chuckled as he put his coat on. "The safest place you can be is in the center of God's will. We leave first thing Monday morning." "Elijah!" Courtney called out to him as he walked out the door. Kevin and Sarah said nothing during the entire exchange. Courtney turned to them. I'm sorry. He is not usually like this." Sarah shook her head. "Don't apologize to me. You didn't do anything. Besides, I've had to raise the bar on what I consider weird these days." She pointed toward the door that Elijah had just left through. "And that just barely makes the cut." Everett took a deep breath and exhaled. He hated that Elijah had left without talking the disagreement over. But had the man gone stark raving mad? What possible good can come of Everett and Courtney tagging along with Elijah, making some wild attempt to aggravate the most powerful man on the face of the earth? Well, sure, none of them liked Luz, but Antichrist or not, he had the full power of the New World Order at his beck and call. And that's it. Chapter 6 has concluded. And then there's still chapters 7 to come. And what will happen? How is Elijah ever going to change Courtney and Everett's mind on that big an issue? Their lives are at stake. What do you think will happen? Don't miss Chapter 7 of The Days of Elijah by Mark Goodwin.